morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Ablaze Radio. So today, we need to take a look at Darkness Ablaze pre-releases. Now, I know that some people are having real pre-releases now, socially distanced, of course. And I know that some people aren't, and some people are playing online, and all kinds of different things are going on. But there is a new set, and I like looking at how we can go about winning pre-releases, what the hidden gems might be, so I figured we should have a look at them in this video. And I want to start off with the card that I think might break pre-releases, and that is Glimwood Tangle. It was only when I actually sat down and started really planning this video that I realized quite how dumb Glimwood Tangle was going to be in a pre-release setting. Now, that is the new stadium that does what Victini used to do. When you flip for an attack, if you don't get the flips you want, you can re-flip. Though do remember the rule, you can re-flip all of the cards or none of the cards. You cannot just re-flip the ones you didn't like. And the thing is that Glimwood Tangle takes several of the Pokemon in this set and makes them way, way better than they would be otherwise. For what it's worth, there are a couple of other stadiums that are in the set. There's 3 stadiums total, so there is a chance that your opponent will have a stadium and be able to replace it. And if you draw one, you're unlikely to draw multiples. But if your opponent doesn't have a stadium or can't find it for a couple turns, this could become nuts. I mean, first thing we can look at here is the Paralyzing Pokemon. The Pokemon that paralyze while dealing damage. So we've got Parasect, 1 grass energy, 30 damage, flip a coin if heads paralysis. Obviously, you need to evolve up into a stage 1 here, but it's only a single energy, so it's not the end of the world. Although you do need the stage 1 and the stadium, I admit that. But now you're doing 30 damage, and if you've got a Glimwood Tangle in play, you've got a 75% chance of paralysis, so hopefully you can get yourself a couple of KOs with this, and with 120 HP, you'll hopefully be able to take a hit or two as well. Now, Vanillite is one that I like very much. Vanillite, it's a basic Pokemon. It only does 10 damage and paralysis on a coin flip, but it is for 1 energy on a basic Pokemon, so I'm going to allow it. Or if you evolve up into Vanillish, then you get to do 30 damage for a single energy with paralysis on a coin flip. And while we're here, shout out to Vanillux. When it's in the active, you just get to flip a coin if heads paralysis, though this cannot be reflipped with Glimwood Tangle as it is an ability, but it's still one I've got my eye on. The other option you've got in the set is Purloin. It's, again, you're talking basic Pokemon, 2 energy, 20 damage, flip a coin if heads paralysis. I'm not loving the 2 energy, but I do like the fact that it is a basic. Now, if you're not looking for paralysis, there are a couple of other Pokemon that can take Glimwood Tangle and get a bit silly. Shinotic, 1 colorless energy, 30 damage, flip a coin. If heads, the defending Pokemon cannot attack during your opponent's next turn. Now, this is only the defending Pokemon, so if your opponent retreats to another Pokemon, they will then be able to attack. But this is very, very fun, and it is on a stage 1, but it is 30 damage, which is kind of cool. Interestingly enough, the second attack does 120 for 2 energy if you've got Glimwood Tangle in play, so certainly if you can get Shinotic and Glimwood Tangle, that's going to be very, very cool. The other one we can look at here is Dugtrio, and Dugtrio again is a stage 1, but for a single fighting energy does 30 damage, and you got to flip a coin, and if heads during your opponent's next turn, you prevent all effects of attacks, including damage, done to this Pokemon by your opponent's Pokemon. So this one, your opponent has got to actually gust around it in order to actually go and get a KO. Except there's no gusting in this set, so they're not going to be able to. So they can't just retreat and attack with something else. They actually will be locked out of attacking Dugtrio for a turn, and that makes me highly amused. You can use all this stuff without Glimwood Tangle. Obviously, you got a 75% chance rather than a 50% chance if you've got Glimwood Tangle, and that's quite a bit better. Although while we're here, there are actually a couple of Pokemon that will get around this, or at least will get around the paralysis. There is a Liepard in the set which literally just cannot be paralyzed. Like, the ability just says it can't be paralyzed, which seems weirdly specific. And then there is the Copperajah that cannot be affected by special conditions. Nose will not be affected by stuff like Dugtrio, but certainly if you go in the paralysis route, there are a couple of Pokemon in the set that can actually get around it that you should probably be aware of. Now, as well as Glimwood Tangle Pokemon, we've actually got some good options of Pokemon to draw cards in this set. And as far as I'm concerned, none of them are as good as Wishy-Washy. Wishy-Washy says that you shuffle your hand into your deck and draw 8 new cards. Now, Wishy-Washy has giant upside and giant downside. The giant upside is a new hand of 8 cards is going to really help you get set up. And remember, pre-releases, you've generally got fewer supporters, etc. You're not building your own engine like you would in a regular deck. So it is less likely that you're going to draw into what you need. This is awesome. Downside, 30 HP. You're going to be giving up a prize to use this. Another one which is very cool here is the Tapu Koko. Tapu Koko here, for 1 energy, lets you draw 2 cards, but it's also 110 HP Pokemon with free retreat, and if you get free energy on, it does 110 damage. But even if you don't play Lightning Energy, 1 Colorless Energy, draw 2 cards on 110 HP free retreat Pokemon, this is one that if you get it, you are going to want to use as, hopefully, a setup Pokemon. It's really quite good. Now, Carnivine, I don't mind. Carnivine is alright. Carnivine, for a single energy, does 20 damage, and then you draw until you've got 5 cards in your hand. And it is a colourless energy, which is lovely, and it does do damage, but it's draw until you've got 5 cards in hand, and we all know that in pre-releases we end up playing a bit more energy than we usually would, and often having slightly larger hand sizes because we're not able to play as many cards, so Carnivine may or may not actually end up working. The last one I like in terms of a draw card is Persimmon. Now, Persimmon isn't necessarily a draw card per se, but for 1 colourless energy, and again we're talking colourless energy basic Pokemon, it's got a call for family attack that searches your deck for 2 basic Pokemon and puts them onto your bench. It's not the only call for family in the set, but unless I've missed something, it's the only call for family that gets 2 basic Pokemon. So if you want to get your basics out and start setting up, this is one you want to go for. Now, there are a few Pokemon in the set that I think are just generally good in pre-releases. Dracovish, now it might be a stage 1 that evolves from a fossil, which makes it slightly awkward, but it also turns off your opponent's evolutions. As long as it's active, your opponent cannot evolve any Pokemon from their hand. And we don't really have much in the set to evolve Pokemon outside of that. So essentially, you're turning off your opponent's evolution, which means they're just not going to be able to evolve. And a lot of pre-release decks do end up revolving around evolution. So Dracovish, if you get this early, if you can get like a turn 2 Dracovish, you could legit just shut down your opponent's deck and win the game based purely on that. While we're talking fossils, I think Arctozolt here really could be an absolute powerhouse. Not for the attack, but the ability says that whenever your opponent attaches an energy from their hand to one of their Pokemon, you put 2 damage counters on that Pokemon. And when you're talking often Pokemon that need a bit more energy, and we're talking lower HPs generally, this could, and lower hitting, lower damage, this really could end up making a difference between KOs and not KOs. Now, a Pokemon that we rarely say nice stuff about on this channel is Escavalier, and it's because we generally don't get good cards of it. But here, 1 Metal Energy, 10 damage, and then you flip 3 coins. If you flip 1 head, you do 20 more damage, 30 total. If you flip 2 heads, 70 more damage, 80 total. And if you flip all 3, you do 140 more damage, 150 total. And I know it's flippy. Again, this would be a good candidate for Glimwood Tangle. But the fact of the matter is, 1 heads is 30 damage, which isn't garbage. 2 heads is 80 damage, which is really good. And 3 heads is 150, which is phenomenal. So I do think it's one you've really got to bear in mind. And while we're talking metal Pokemon, I do really like the Melmetal here. Now, Melmetal for a single metal energy does 30 damage and attaches an energy from your discard to this Pokemon. And it's got 150 HP, so there is an excellent chance that you'll actually be able to take a hit with this. That this will actually survive for a turn or two to actually get the energy on. And because you're essentially attaching 2 energy per turn, you will get up to doing 130. And it is actually doable, whereas for a lot of Pokemon, 4 energy, 130 in a pre-release, you just wouldn't be able to even suggest it. It just wouldn't be viable. But this one actually totally works. And then there's a couple of colorless Pokemon I'm quite a fan of as well. Now, Delcatty is kind of a weird one. Delcatty's a very tricksy one. The attack I like, for a single colorless energy, you switch your opponent's active with one of their bench, and then the new active Pokemon is confused. Now, free energy 90 damage is kind of awkward, but what I really like with Delcatty here is just the idea of constantly bringing up a high retreat Pokemon that's going to be stuck in the active and confused. They are going to be able to flip heads and get around it, but it's one that I really like playing around with. And then Swanna. Now, I love me some Ducklets, and maybe I'm a little bit biased here, but it's a free retreat Pokemon, and for free energy you do 70 damage, but if you discard a card from your hand, you do 140. It is a reliable 140 damage, because you're almost certainly going to have a card in your hand that you can discard, and then all of a sudden you get to just do 140 every turn. Free retreat, colorless energy. If you've played Birdkeeper from your hand this turn, you actually get to do this for free. So if you can pull Birdkeeper as well, it's phenomenal, but you are then relying on the stage 1 and the Birdkeeper. I like Swanna even if you don't hit Birdkeeper. Obviously, if you do hit Birdkeeper, it becomes quite a little bit better. Now, there are a couple of Pokemon in the pre-release that I really like for occasional use, and the first one of them is Kangaskhan. Kangaskhan has got that attack, which is the kind of thing we've seen many times. 2 colorless energy, 120 damage, if one of your Pokemon was KO'd the previous turn. Now, what I really like about this is that you can then add a third energy and just keep doing 100. But this is one that is actually legitimately going to work purely in terms of just being able to constantly hit decent damage. And if you bring it up after a KO, you've essentially got a 2 energy basic Pokemon that is going to do some damage. The other occasional use one I really like is Hooper. Hooper's good. 1 darkness energy, 90 damage. There must be a downside. There is. It only works if you became active this turn. Now, Hooper's one you got to be careful with in a pre-release because you're not always going to be able to switch it out, and it does have a retreat cost of 2. So you got to time your Hooper well, but 90 damage, 1 energy in a pre-release especially is just phenomenal. And then to finish off, a couple of emergency Pokemon. A couple Pokemon that we could play as a I literally am going to lose this game Hail Mary time. First one is Carablast, and bonus points because Carablast does evolve into Escavalier. But for 1 colorless energy, you do 20 damage for each heads you can flip, and you get to flip until you hit tails. Chances of hitting 6 heads in a row to get that emergency KO, very, very low. But if it's either you are going to win the game right now, or, I don't know, if you can flip 8 heads in a row, you stay in the game and might still win, I want to have the option of flipping those 8 heads in a row rather than just admitting defeat. I'm not saying you should build a Carablast deck in a pre-release, but I am saying it is a great option if you've got nothing. Speaking of which, Toxtricity. 2 colorless energy, and this is one of my favorite cards in the set. It's dumb and I love it. Flip a coin. If heads, you discard the top 5 cards of your opponent's deck. If tails, you discard the top 5 cards of your own deck. Now, again, if you've got Glimwood Tangle, this is a much, much better proposition, and I could have put this at the beginning of the video. If you've got Glimwood Tangle, this might be worth just going Toxtricity, because if you can mill like 10, 15 cards from the top of your opponent's deck, you are probably going to win the game, because they'll have nothing to use. But what I really like here is just, I've got nothing, I'm going to try and mill my opponent out. We're only playing 40 card decks, so milling 5 has way more of an impact here than it is when we're playing normally and have 60 card decks, so let's give it a go. It might work, it might not, but it's a great emergency option. It is a 2 energy stage 1 rather than a single energy basic, which makes it more awkward as an emergency option, but I still love it, and you can't change my mind. So there's my hints, my tips, my tricks for pre-releases. Cards that you really should have in mind that aren't necessarily good in the regular format, but could be dumb good in a pre-release. But I'd like to know what you think. So let me know in the comment section, would you? Go nuts, be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWassy, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.